Hello, my name is Matthew East. I'm making a series of videos as part of my Tac0 project. Today I'm shooting outside the Canberra Theatre Centre. And right next to the Canberra Theatre Centre is the KPMG building. Now KPMG is a very large consulting firm, and that's something I'm going to weave into my video today. And me doing my video here is very appropriate. Right? Tac0, it's a combination of process art and community theatre. It's something which has involved the entire community. It's involved a bit of role play. It's involved a lot of different people interacting with the project. It's been a lot of fun. And the purpose of it has been to try and bring a light to issues in government, the NDIS, and the interaction between firms and our government. Today I'm going to talk about something which is interesting, but in a way very benign. We're going to start talking about corporate espionage, and we're going to talk about vocational rehabilitation and private detectives. And we're also going to talk about HR departments and other government agencies. So I'm going to start talking about private detectives, because this is something which is very interesting in that it is very interestingly unsexy. So the majority of private detectives historically were hired during the days of fault divorce. If you wanted to get a divorce, you had to go to a court. You needed to prove infidelity or the behavior of your spouse was sufficiently bad that the divorce could go through. And this meant that private detectives were often hired so that they were able to build a case to get that divorce through the court. Now, a lot of the different kinds of services which are similar to private detectives now involve institutions such as insurance. So in vocational rehabilitation, which is the industry that I was briefly a part of, and unfortunately haven't been able to really break from because it is corporate espionage. That industry is based on finding information about people for HR departments. And HR departments, and again, the least sexy thing in the world, right? And we use this phrase intelligence because of this idea of 007 and all that stuff. It's got this sexy connotation, but it's really just information about people. And if you're managing people, you want information to fulfill the agendas of your institution. And that's exactly what a HR department is. And that's what vocational rehabilitation consultants are. And for insurance companies, private detectives, and other services which are hired by corporations to be able to fulfill their agendas, kind of function like this. It's very we have this idea of government agencies such as ASIS, ASIO, ASD, all these institutions as being like the be-all and end-all of the intelligence work. They're not. In fact, I'd actually say that the people who work for these institutions might actually be less capable than your HR manager in being able to get a clue about people. I'm sure institutions such as ASIO and ASIS, they attract people who are very intelligent, but the rate that they work at is not the same intensity that your average HR department or your vocational rehabilitation consultant with a billing target is. And the other thing is that these people are doing work which is similar every single time. Every case they have is a similar sort of thing, and so they get to build up a specialist knowledge in handling a particular kind of problem for whoever is paying them. It's actually firms which in the private sector who engage in HR, who engage in management consulting, work at a higher intensity, have more access to innovate, and are less restricted than our actual intelligence agencies, and they are doing the same work. The difference is that their target is you or the government, and the government doesn't care too much about what they do. It wasn't until recently when PricewaterhouseCoopers was in the news for stealing information that they had from government clients regarding tax policy to give to their private sector partners to reduce their tax overheads. And this kind of information sharing is very normal in this industry. I have had situations where I've interviewed at fake companies developed specifically to get information about me due to activism and actively being against these institutions. But at the same time, I've also done the work myself. What we used to do when I was working in vocational rehabilitation is that our job was to create a case against a person who was involved in the workers' compensation system. So what we would do is that we would get information about them, pretend to be them, and then we would go to individual employers and we would pretend to be them to get them through an interview process. And by doing this, we were able to create a case against them which would be able to be used at the policy level, not the legal level, just the policy level of a vocational rehabilitation firm and the insurance firm to be able to remove that person from their payments. The system is not based on what's best for the client, it's based on what does the best for the bottom line with the company. And we have these institutions such as private detectives and vocational rehabilitation who do this work. And I wanted to start my conversation about this today in this place to sort of just say, hey, a lot of this stuff that we think about in society, that we associate and think about in the day-to-day is quite mundane, but it is there. Now, I have worked with private detectives before, unfortunately on the receiving end of their work. The one time I had an interaction with a private detective was with my own work cover claim. When I finished working at Henny's Health Group, I found myself in a situation where I was having fugue states and finding myself in places in my house without knowing how I got there. I've been in fight and flight mode for around 2 years, and was suffering from a level of burnout, which was honestly quite incredible. Now, with that, I ended up being interviewed by a private detective who was assigned by the insurance firm. Now, in the industry of vocational rehabilitation, we were always taught about these instances because people got all excited about these people who are committing frauds and these things. They want to think that they're smarter than everyone and that they're in this kind of environment where they're getting to find these con men and these things. A lot of the time it's just shit eating though. So we'd always hear about these times where the insurance firm would hire a private detective, find the individual who had a back injury, play a rugby game, right? And they'll take pictures of that and I'd use that as proof. Maybe that was the only rugby game that they played that year. It was the most important thing to them, so they were able to handle the pain for that one event. But I'm sorry, bucko, the insurance firm's been tracking you for a while, and you've got all these people who aren't necessarily interested in even in decreasing the overall expenditure in the industry. You've got a lot of people who are networked together who have been able to commodify the injury of a person to be able to remove them from their payments. Now, because they have a buffet of this, they all shake hands with each other, they're all interconnected, and their business is reliant on each other's work, they're able to sustain this, right? It's not clear to me that this insurance-based system actually does reduce the cost of expenditure and is worth the stress it puts on injured workers. If I'm honest, as time goes on, I'm thinking a government-run kind of intervention for it, healthcare intervention for it, is probably more warranted than the insurance system that we have, particularly with private insurance. They certainly don't seem to be interested in caring for the people who are injured. I've had that first-hand experience. And a lot of these people aren't particularly bright. The private detective I worked with, have all these ideas about, corporate espionage and these things, and these very intelligent people. I don't think she had a degree, and half the report was covered in spelling errors. I ended up rewriting the report 3 or 4 times with her to get it right. Part of that was also because I wasn't in a state at the time to be able to give her my best either, so I hope she isn't too offended if she listens to this. But the reality of our current world is that it is very complex. We have not grown up in the world that our parents did. Corporate espionage is a thing. We are surrounded by intelligence gathering institutions, everything from your phone and the people who are marketing things to you, to your HR department, and fuckers like me who do befriend people, get information about them to keep them off their insurance claims. At least I did that in the past. I wasn't very good at it. I had a moral bearing against it, and so wasn't able to survive in that industry. But that's the start of my communication today. Just remember, when these firms start interacting with government doesn't have any defense against them, because they're not used to working at government. People who work in government departments are not used to working with the degree of clueiness and craftiness that these people have to work in the day-to-day to meet their quotas. And the pressures they are under in the corporate sector are far, far greater than government. Like governments, it's not. I'm pretty impressed that we have a system which is as efficient as it is with the APS. It's a miracle to get any government kind of department to work effectively, and I think the APS in Australia is actually a crown jewel. It's amazing how efficient it is, and I kind of see a lot of the work for vocational rehabilitation in the future and injury insurance as needing to be transferred to a government-run institution rather than the private sector.